Hello everyone, this is Apex, and watching the #1 Zywu hater in the world.
They say every cloud has its silver lining, but I'm afraid in the case of this Cloud9, they don't even reach the final and get silvers or runners-up medals. So actually the only silver lining, if you're a Cloud9 fan, hoping for some good news here, is you could save more money off Gamersubs than usual with my code Thorin, Thorin at Gamersubs.gg. Instead of the usual 10%, as you can see in the bottom right, you can save 22% as long as you make your order before either Friday, the 9th of February at 8 p.m. CET, 2 p.m. EST, or as long as stocks last. So if they run out, they run out. So check it out right now. Basically, if you want to buy some, I'd suggest you go and immediately purchase. Like I said, 22% off everything. Gamersubs flavors, all the delicious ones, Blue Raz, Dragon Fruit Punch, Clyde's Black Cherry. They've got the waifu cups, those ones with like anime girls. Some of them make like the swimsuit go the color of that, or other parts of their body potentially. They have all sorts of jazz. They have tea. They have ones with no caffeine, L-theanine, help you go to sleep. They have like yerba mate and black tea to get you going in the day. Got all sorts of stuff there. Check it out while stocks last, obviously. Now, the reason I have called this video, not just like what's going on with Cloud9 or the new Cloud9, is because I actually think specifically the framing needs to be Electronic and Perfecto's Cloud9, because it was their move to this team that established, again, an era of hype for Cloud9. Before that, when you had the Nafani, Shiro, Ax1Le era, realistically, the only angle people were looking for was like, look, idiots on forums were like, kick inters. People who I'd say more like experts about the game were maybe like, Nafani might need to be upgraded or changed because you've got Ax1Le and Shiro and they're two of the best top 10 players in the world and they're not winning tournaments or going deep that often. Then I imagine there were some people, maybe the ones who aren't as sentimental, often thought, shouldn't Hobbit be considered someone to potentially replace? Like he hasn't really been like he was in 2021 and early 2022. Looked like his game had fallen off a little bit. Something happened to him. So there was plenty of players you could replace. And the problem was, when the news was, right, Nafani's leaving, oh, wait a minute, Navi's broken up their lineup and we're getting Electronic and Perfecto. That was like more than you could have dreamed of if you were a Cloud9 fan, if you love Russian Counter-Strike, by the way, because Electronic is one of the best riflers ever, not just even from his region, and has famously been a very good sort of number 2 star / sidekick type figure. I mean, the joke is obviously if Simple was Superman, then Electronic's Batman in that analogy, right? Well, if you have a team already with Ax1Le and Shiro, just telling me you're adding Electronic's already going to make me mega hyped. That's right. That right there is a dominant defensive AWPer, a dominant aggressive rifler, and then another dominant aggressive rifler who has secondary calling components and might even go first and doesn't even need to be behind the space creator. Like that on paper looks like already that should be the basics of like a top 3 to 4 team in the whole world. Quite frankly, a team that can win championships. Then you add in Perfecto. That's the greatest steal of all time. This guy is, I always say, he's the Russian Zipniks. He's unbelievable how good he is in the clutch with his brain, like playing efficiently, min-maxing the match. He doesn't need to get many kills because he doesn't die very often. Seems like quite a shrewd player. So if you add these players, those 4 already, Shiro, Ax1Le, Electronic, Perfecto, that alone I'm hyped. Whoever the IGL is, I'm hyped. Problem is, the IGL is a different player at that time because Hobbit's the 5th player. So already it's like, whoa, where's Hobbit going to fit in this one? Because we've already got 3 world-class rifle players. Okay. And then wait a minute. Electronic staying as IGL like he did in Navi, which was always a bit sus, and quite frankly was the era when Navi wasn't as good and even people like Simple were as good. Yeah, I'm not as that happy with that. I don't feel like the Electronic IGL experiments worked. So then apparently Shiro agreed because it just didn't work out. They weren't particularly good, quite frankly, when they made this lineup. Actually, on paper, everyone got hyped, especially because of some of those first results when they first came to those initial tournaments. It looked like they were getting close to doing something really special and have some firepower, and then they never really ever did. They never got it together. So eventually Shiro got unhappy and left, which then meant you don't have an AWPer. So even though there are tons of Ukrainian and Russian AWPers out there, they didn't go and get one. Bizarrely, they initially just brought Boomich, who obviously is like an aggressive rifler, and something, his definition of a space creator and like an aggro, non-stop top push CT player, but who's done an IGL style with, I would say, like with a bit of loose, because I think it allowed the blade system to then come in and Na'Vi. And in this case, I think it's just allowing sort of players to play how they want to play. You bring in Boomich to be IGL, so that takes off IGL off Electronic. Now, good news. Electronic's had some pretty good numbers in some of these tournaments, so he looks a lot better. He's back to something akin to what he was in Na'Vi when he wasn't the IGL. But it comes at the expense of having a dominant CT AWPer, and that's one of the best things you can have in Counter-Strike nowadays at the tier 1 level if you want to win. So the issue now is you've changed IGL, that probably works, but Boomich isn't exactly much of a fragger himself. Hobbit's gone completely off the boil. Ax1Le as a star is not playing at that level, although I do think people are exaggerating because of his role and how exceptional he was a year or so ago. And then basically you have like Shiro isn't there anymore, and he was obviously you could always rely on his numbers. So now you've got Electronics, your main star. Perfecto's good, but at his role, and you're missing a bit of firepower. You don't have an AWP. The IGL angle, look, it's not like I'd say it's bad, but you haven't got a genius IGL who wins games just with their mind. You don't even have an Alexi B, in my opinion. You have someone where it's more like he sets up the game and then the people play the game. So when you look at it, it hasn't lived up to the billing, and it's looking like it's in trouble still. They've played enough matches now with Boomich that this is looking quite bad. Because if I take you and I start showing you on the websites, you have to realise Boomich joined before the fall final. So if we go back to here, they'd had this online tournament, then he came to this land, the fall final. What we'll do is we'll look at all these. Then they had Bet Boom Daka, or whatever, Dacha, and then they had the World Tour final, and then they had Spring Groups, and then they got Katowice now. So at the Blast fall final, what happened was you had them play Na'Vi in the group stage, and they beat them 2-1 narrowly, but I think this was the first land where Wonderful replaced Simple, so they started to figure things out a little bit. And as you see there, it's close. Like, you got a very close first map, you lose a reasonably close second, and then you win a reasonably close third. Okay, but you get a win over Na'Vi, even if it's slightly scuffed roster. Then you go and play against FaZe Clan. It's very narrow. You could have won this game. Look, you did win a narrow first game. You got smashed on the second, but look at this third one here. This third one's OT. This really was winnable, and it's on Anubis, which you'll find out is one of the best Cloud9 maps. But guess what? The theme that will emerge is they are blue balls in you. The colours of the actual fucking team are appropriate in that sense. Like, they're not the worst blue balls. They're like a mild light blue. Like, you're constantly just on the edge. Oh, bloody hell, I was so close again. Oh, bloody hell, please, Ax1Le, can I just finish? No, we don't finish in Cloud9. So then, okay, luckily coming and winning this game means because of the Blast format, you get in the playoffs because there's only 8 teams and then 6 of the 8, only 2 get eliminated in the group. So you go there, you get to play Heroic. Now on paper, this is dynamite, right? But play Heroic, but remember, this is the mega scuffed Heroic, because this is when Stabby have done their stuff, but they haven't got to Astralis yet. But at the same time, you don't have the new players and you haven't bought Kixon. So at the time, they had Dupree standing in. They kept Tessus and Shush. Cadian just played an event, and then Zyphon was just there standing in. So you get a 2-0 win over Heroic in the first round of the playoffs. You get a top 40 first event, but is Heroic that good? I mean, this was kind of a whack group if you look over here. Like, the joke is Complexity and Heroic are the other teams get out because Astralis was with the Nightmare lineup. So you go and look, you easily beat them on the second map. First one's quite close. It's not a very good, like, you basically just barely beat a mixed team on the first map there. You go to the semis, you play Vitality, who we now know from this event is the best team in the world. They have the best player in the world, Zewu. Actually, you know what? This is winnable. It's really close again. Notice how the first outing, like when they got Electronic, so much potential. Oh my goodness, this is really thrilling. Look, they narrowly beat you on Mirage in overtime, so we could have won that. You beat them by like a small margin on Nuke, and then they narrowly beat you in regulation with the smallest margin possible on Inferno, a map that obviously had been quite big for them in the past years in CSGO. So then they obviously go on to win the tournament. So wait a minute. Okay, we did lose to FaZe. They came second. We lost to Vitality narrowly. We could have beat both, though. Could have beat both these teams. So that, logically, Cloud9 could have won this event. Even without an AWPer, even without any of that shenanigans, even with Ax1Le playing, they could have won this event. In fact, I think this was even the one where Electronic played bonkers. But they didn't. So on paper, I would say at this event, they're probably the third best team. Like, I think they would be better than Complexity, but I would love to have seen them played. So, okay, maybe they're the third best team. They could have been the best. Spoiler, it doesn't get much better than that, I'm afraid. Because after this, they have that tournament in Dubai, the Bet Boom Daka, or whatever it was, right? And as you'll see, they don't even finish top 4, so you already know it's a bad sign, right, guys? Because when you go down here, you go all the way to Dubai to play this LAN, and at this LAN, it's a real lineup, at this LAN, in your opening game, you play against Gamer Legion, and this is the Gamer Legion, crucially, that has Snacks as the IGL, They've got Volt. This is the proper lineup. That's the one that's done a bunch of interesting results since. It still seems pretty solid now, even at Katowice. Could have done something more and has caused upsets. You beat them quite convincingly. Okay, this is awesome. Great. Maybe this really is the truth, this Cloud9. You know what? In CS2 at this time, the perception is it's only the AWP's only coming back as a dominant weapon. You can do a lot of rifle stuff. Obviously, the super peak is advantage. T-sides are super powered. It's MR12. You only need a few big rounds and moments on T-side. You go, surely Cloud9 can do something. You thrash Gamer Legion. Let's get cooking. This is a smaller event, but with good teams. Let's get fucking cooking, shall we? So then you go and you play against MIBR. That's right. People like Insane, fucking safe. What? So you dominate the first map, your main map, by the way, the map that they love, Anubis. You get beaten in overtime and in first, so this could have been a 2-0. And then they just absolutely smash your fucking cheeks on Mirage and convincingly beat you with MIBR. I mean, that's already a bad sign, right? Okay, everyone can have a bad loss, though. You're not out in the tournament yet. Then you play against the titular Bet Boom, who there's no universe where in configuration you should be allowed to play in a fucking tournament called that. So you play against them, and look, I won't shade anything dodgy in, but it ain't a good look. Oh, Bet Boom mega upsets you. Bet Boom, who you might remember, is Nafani's team. Look, it's kind of of lesser names and rejects. It's kind of like a little fucking Suicide Squad, as it were, if you want to use that analogy, right? But obviously some solid players. Chiron can frag, Siren was okay. Zort is actually pretty underrated. Could have himself played with Electronic in an EG. Nafani's actually all right. Inner Shine, the old analyst for phases there. But mate, they can't be smashing you like this. First game close, second game, look at this, dusted you off completely. You don't even get a single T fucking round. And you're out of the tournament. You're out of a tournament 5th to 6th in an 8-team tournament called fucking Bet Boom Dakar. Already, guess what? I am not impressed. And I'm not George St. Pierre talking to whatever Matt Hughes back in the day, or whatever it was, right? Then you go to the Blast World Final. Right, well, you know what? Little stumble there, but they've had all these close games, and they could even in one of the stumbles have won 2-0. So surely there's going to be an event where they get it together. Bad news, they're not in the top 4 this. It's an 8-team tournament and 6 teams make the playoffs. So you might know where this is going. Yeah, that's right. In their group, they beat Ents. But remember, this is Ents. But have you noticed they're missing someone here? No Snappy, right? This is when Glaive's the IGL, and obviously this lineup doesn't stay together very long, because then Madden and Supias go to Falcons, and Nerds goes to Heroic. And basically, some of these moves were known or in the works around exactly this time, but you lost in game leader Snappy, so in theory, Ents should be worse. They should struggle a little bit initially with Glaive. 2-0, okay, nice big win on Ancient, very close overtime win on Overpass, but even so, we need to win some games. We deserve a few for Cloud9. Then you go and you play the winners match. The format was slightly different this time around, by the way, because you don't lose and then play a third one. So then you play against Vitality, and what do you know? They get 2-0'd by Vitality. You almost beat them the last time around. This time, a little bit close. 13-11 on Anubis, your main map. On Inferno, they beat you comfortably on that one again. It's clearly a map you're having problems against them on. But it's okay. Vitality's the best team in the world. They're beating everyone. By the way, they are. Look, in this tournament, they didn't even lose a map. Last tournament around, you were giving them a real challenge. But okay, let's go to the playoffs and do it against the other teams. It's okay to lose to the best teams. Except, of course, if you then go and Mouse Sports has just lost fucking Frozen, their best player, clearly. And they brought in Prolan, who's still, by the way, yet to re-establish himself as a world-class rifler. And with a brand new lineup, they just dust you off straight away in the playoffs. And I mean dust you off, as in get the fuck out of Mirage, and then we'll just comfortably beat on Ancient. Go home, go to bed. Go to bed, Cloud9. Guys, that's the first 3 lands. So they're using their real lineup here. Other people are making new lineups, new changes, and they're almost getting the big wins they need. They're getting some of the medium wins, and they're even losing to people they probably shouldn't lose to. Or if you want them to be a champion with the power of this roster, they should at least be able to beat or be contending with, be right there in the game. Now, luckily, they made the RMR, so you got that going for you. So then you come to the Blast Spring groups. So obviously it's just the group stage. We don't know beyond that. Now, spoiler, they didn't make it. They have to go to the showdown. So already, this didn't go well. So you go down here, and they were in Group D, which I would actually say of these groups, the hardest one on paper is probably, it's hard to say because Corval used to be good. So it could have been this one, but I wouldn't say that. I would say the hardest actually is probably this one from a sleeper angle, because people expect a lot from Liquid. There was a world where this, if Astralis had been mega and Falcons had hit the ground run, this could have been really strong too. It's not the hardest group. Actually, I'd say it's like you're in like the third or fourth best group. So this is a very doable one because a lot of these teams, Heroic at this point in time is the new lineup. You have with Kixan, but they haven't played yet. You have Big, who are always kind of, they're good in Blast, but they're not a top team. VP, they're tricky to play, but again, to be fair, they're from your region, you know them inside out. So you do beat the new Heroic. Okay, that's good. You really dominant fashion. This is looking fucking awesome. We're getting going. New lineup of Heroic, let's beat them. Let's get going. Let's get rolling. We play a VP. Oh, what's that? We could even have got 2-0 and we lose 2-1. Now look, the last two maps are close, yeah? You win on your map. By the way, winning on Anubis is not a problem for this team, but you'll see beyond that, there's a lot of problems. The problem they have is what they got beyond that. People know about H8. People know the maps you're good at. It's not very many. So you get that win and then you lose. Okay, all you have to do is beat Big and you at least get to go into the next match and have a chance, right? And then even if you lose, you get this like extra one here. No, just get beaten in a close series, but just get beaten 2-0 by fucking Big. If you can look at Big's roster, you can look at Cloud9's, and you can tell me that Big should beat Cloud9, well, yeah, that's because the beauty of Counter-Strike is it's a team game and it's about more than just skill. But if you look at the players on paper, it doesn't look like it should ever be possible. And the idea is just you don't even get a map. Remember, it's just supposed to also be one of your best maps. Anubis also one of these are your two best maps, and they're just beating you 2-0. This is unacceptable. And so you're not even making it to Blast at that point in time. Then you come to kind of Eats itself. You come in, you have to play in the plane, because you've just had these issues. You lose to Rebels Gaming on Mirage. Why are you playing Mirage in a BO1 plane? I will never understand, because that's like a perfect map to get upset by a team you're not that familiar with. The Polish team, Rebels, who are fucking nobodies. Joke is coached by the most famous player there, which is Sparrow, like an old school AWPer from about 8 years ago, who never really made it to the top level. So you lose to them in a close game. Who cares about close games at this point in time? How many times you fucking lose? Luckily, this time you beat the mighty Bet Boom. Oh, but don't worry. They still have an epic, fucking insanely drawn out. Remember, them R12 guys. Overtime game on Overpass. But then you managed to convincingly beat them elsewhere. Okay, all good. Let's keep going. Then you go and you play against VP, the team that beat you at Blast. Hey, you get some revenge. We're getting some revenge games here going. You smash them on Overpass, smash them on Ancient. You do manage to lose your own map pick, your best map by far. But to be fair, VP is a famous team for losing their map pick and winning the other one because it's their style, not necessarily the strength on the map that gets them the wins. But hey, you're into kind of Eats here. Good news. Bad news is you're going to finish last place. 2 losses and you're out. Now, first of all, when I go and look, admittedly, I actually think this is the harder on paper of the two brackets. But even so, your side is the easiest of the whole fucking tournament. If you beat Mouse, you play the winner of game. That, in theory, by the way, the joke there is, for a team of Cloud9's roster on paper, that should mean you're almost guaranteed to make this match, which gets you to the Katowice playoffs, whether in the round of 6 or the semis. You did not win those matches, so you don't even get the easy route, even though you got the best bracket draw almost imaginable. Because you'll lose the opener immediately to Mouse. With Roland, without Frozen. So you win Overpass, okay. Lose Mirage, okay. Lose a mega overtime game on it. By the way, I'm so sick of this team losing close and overtime games. It just routinely happens. And it's really sad because to me that shows you don't have things like the stabilizing dominant AWP. You don't have the IGL who can make the adaptation and the genius read. You have some streaky riflers, mainly on the aggressive side. And then people like Hobbit who are just lost in the mix. And Boomich himself isn't like some massive fragger. So I actually think this team ends up being kind of a mess all in all. So you drop to the lower and you have to play Monty. Now, anyone who's been seeing the last few months knows that one of the two teams you don't want to run into in a bracket where you're like, you'll beat them and go past is Gamer Legion and Monty. Because these guys are fucking way more dangerous than they look. They've beaten so many big names and stopped so many tournament runs. And they do it again here, even if they don't go further themselves. It's a very close series. Both of these are the closest losses you can have in regulation. But look, Monty has beaten you 13-11, 13-11. By the way, you didn't get a single one of your main maps, but that already shows something weird's going on Cloud9. You come last place at the main event. You get into the main event, but then you come last place. So for people who don't know, Cloud9's roster with Boomich has 19 wins and 24 losses. So already, you can see, we're losing a lot of fucking games. The players themselves, you already see that part of the problem. So if you just go and look at the player breakdown of the team, it'll tell you the whole story. Like, as you can see, A lot of this from Electronic, by the way, in terms of the overall rating, was because he went supernova at, I think, the first one, the Blast or whatever. But overall, he is the best thing, the closest to a star you have in your team. If you look at him, you can sort of rely on him to get like a sort of 0.7 kills per round in a tournament, which is very, very good for the roles that he plays. He actually is giving you some star rifling power. The problem is, what have you got beyond that? Because actually, even though when you go down, there's 2 players with 106 rating, if you go look, Perfecto having that is Perfecto doing his job. Electronic's doing his job completely. Perfecto's doing his job. Bear in mind, remember, he is like sort of like a fucking guy who just doesn't die. He's still, by the way, an underrated CT fragger. He does his job. He's lost a few big clutches, but he still wins you clutches. He's still a very smart player. Electronic's good. The problem, obviously, that you have here is Ax1Le's having issues. Now, people have this whole angle, like, it's causing a fire, he's not that. That can't be it. Like, first of all, like a config type player, there's not that many of these players can really put up insane ratings tournament. Like, it's just not the roles that they play make it way harder to do that, in my opinion. And I don't think it's just an Nafani angle. Already Cloud9 was having some issues, and some of them were falling off and having the weird tournaments anyway. I think there's more to this issue than that. Maybe it's a coaching issue, maybe it's personal motivation, maybe it's having these new teammates. Who knows what it could be? But clearly something has happened to this guy's game, even though he's still all right. He's not terrible though. He's still all right. It's just there's an issue there because we needed star power, and we thought he was going to be our best player potentially on the roster, especially when Shiro leaves. Then when you go down, Hobbit as like a 1.0, that's actually not as bad as you'd think, right? It's not too terrible. People, it's not as bad as it was like a month or 2 ago, but even so, it's not great. And obviously, you'd hope he's rounding it out and he's like a mega veteran. I don't know how much of that he's really doing. Then you've got Boomich, who looks like he has sort of done a decent job IGLing. He's on the uptick. He's coming back. Look, he's a good util player. He does some of the things you want as an IGL. He adds a little bit of like spice. The problem I have is this. He's still got that really interesting CT side, which just aggro pushes all the time and just sort of weird engagement. So I do feel like sometimes, quite frankly, that is something that costs them, because I actually think CT side's another area where this team can be a bit shaky, where sometimes they aren't patient enough, or they try some weird moves, or they just get outread completely. The big strength so far has actually been as a T-side team. Obviously, this is when Pika's advantage has been really strong in CS2. You have those smokes, people play aggro and play up on people. Well, you know what? On the T-side, you can see why this team actually has been able to do some work. Like, look how spread out all the entry attempts are. Basically, everyone except Perfecto, your super closer, is involved in it. They've even got all pretty decent rates as well. You can see how this team is able to win rounds. The problem, obviously, for me is that's what this update potentially has nerfed. So if this actually nerfs their T side, they've still got the issues on CT side. They don't have the AWPer, they don't have the IGL. They're going to be in trouble. Like, surely this lineup, if it doesn't make any changes, actually gets worse in the current hierarchy. Because when you go and look at their map pool, it makes a lot of sense. Like, if you look at their maps that they've had over this time span, so their best map is, on paper, in theory, it's Overpass, but they haven't played it as many as some of the others, because that's the one where they're 5-3, and they've had, like, wins over FaZe, Ensign Overtime, VP, Mouse Sports. In general, just a pretty good one. That's one note where you go look at the players. It makes perfect sense why it's their best map. Electronic, Ax1Le, and Hobbit are all having really good performances on this map. It's going really awesome. Then you've got Anubis, which is definitely another map up there. If they can't get an Overpass, they're going to go into Anubis. They've done it many, many times. They're 5-4. Problem is, they've lost the last 3. So that's already betraying them. But they've beaten the likes of Na'Vi. They've lost in close games to the FaZe and Vitality, like I said before. They've beaten VP. Even the loss to Big was very close. The more recent loss to VP was a big one. It's one of the rare times they've ever lost Big on that map. Certainly it's a map they seem very comfortable with. It seems like one of their best maps all in all. It's one that, by the way, Electronic's been really good on. Perfecto's actually been very good on this map. These 2 maps, you can see why, if they can get them, they've got a chance in a series. The problem is, after those maps, it gets really ropey. Like Ancient, that they play loads, they're 3-6 on. They've lost to loads of teams. In fact, if I just tell you the teams they've beaten, it's not that many. They've beaten Ents, they've beaten VP. It's about it of the big names. They've lost to Na'Vi, FaZe, Mouse, Big, Mouse again in OT. This is one where it's harder for Electronics. That's one of the reasons why you're not doing as well on the map. Perfecto's still legit, and then the rest are just whatever. Then you have Mirage, a map you're probably going to have to play loads of times, either from the opponent picking it, because you ban Vertigo every time, or as a third map, or in sometimes BO1s. You're 2-6 on that one. You lost a close one to Vitality. You've beaten Gamer Legion, congrats. You've lost to fucking MIBI. You lost to Mouse. You beat Heroic. You lost to Rebels. You lost to Mouse. You lost to Monty. And you're on a 3-game losing streak. And they massively struggle on the T side of this map. And that is very disturbing, because 1, that wasn't the case in Na'Vi. And 2, surely the Boomich style of IGLing should work better on this map? Surely having all the rifles should be good on this map. But you see, this is a map that is a nightmare map for them right now. Then you go to Inferno, which they're having to play all the time, just like Mirage. In those series, any team that's good on Inferno is just going to pick it into you. They're 2-4. They beat Na'Vi, I think it was the new Na'Vi. They beat Heroic, like the Sus one. They lost to Vitality very close. They lost to MIBR in overtime. They lost to Vitality and they lost to Virtus.pro. They're on a 4-game losing streak. And Ax1Le really struggles on this map, on Inferno. A map where you'd want a player like him to tear it up on the T side. Then you have Nuke. Look, you're 2-1, but there is a reason you barely play it. You beat Heroic 13-11. You beat Vitality miraculously. And then you lost to Bet Boom 5-13 as it's not a map you play. Yeah, in the brief time you played it, Electronic was godlike. The rest are all bombs. Even Perfecto has bad ratings and stats on this map and struggled. Guys, how are you going to have in a 7-map pool a scenario where we can't actually play Mirage, Inferno and Nuke? We've got to have 2 of those 3, at least okay level, so we can play them when they pick into us, so we can play them in the decider, so on things like Inferno, right, so we can default into it on a BO1. You can't do that. In this team, you have to hope you get Overpass. If not, you're going to take Anubis or have Anubis as a third or Overpass as a third. And then Ancient, you'll try when you can, but it's been kind of sus. And you just only people like Perfecto pulling your ass out the fire. Then the others, you just completely lost on. You are absolutely awash and you are in bad shape. And as a result, there's a reason why they have a million Anubis picks because a lot of people just ban away Overpasses. They know how good it is. Overpass is obviously there. They'll sometimes pick an Ancient. And then the decider can be all over the place because people can just toy with these guys in the pick ban all day long. It's also how I know the coaching and IGL is a little bit sus in this team because they can never somehow get ahead of a team. They can never seem like out veto a team. And so they're lacking firepower. Their IGL angle's all right, maybe good, but it's not amazing. They're not going to get carried by the IGL's mind. One of their star riflers doesn't play like a star. One of their veterans plays pretty bad and doesn't frag enough. And they don't have an AWPer. This is rough. Like, the sad thing is, all you got to do is drop any above average tier 1 AWPer. Dexter, whoever it is, if you drop a good AWPer into this team, Zorti, go get Zorti. Go get one of these players, and I am telling you, immediately this team would actually be top 4 in my opinion. I think that would be enough to give you like if you go look at those maps, I could imagine immediately your Mirage will get way better, your Anubis get a bit more deadly potentially, your CT sides improve with a stable AWPer. I think at that point in time, you'd be able to win some of these close games. Then people like Perfecto win you clutches or try to get you a big opening. It's going to have even more impact on the game. Suddenly, like, these games don't become 11-13 losses, overtime losses. Like, we almost win on the second map, then we get blown out on the third. I think then you'd actually be in the mix. So Cloud9, they're still so close. They're still so tantalizing. We've still got the blue balls. And please, can we just finish? Can you complete the lineup so we can all finish? Events come and go, fame rises and then falls away. You have a job, you lose a job. You do one thing, you have to move on to another. But one of the cool things about my career is I have my own support network who's always got my back. So I always know I can rely on support to do the work I want to do and talk the way I want to talk and not have to follow certain rules that others arbitrarily have to follow. And that support group is, of course, called the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community. This video and all the others on my channel was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Tobias Bernasconi, Torin, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, and you know it, always my main man Jerky's minion, rocking with me, ride or die. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode of Reflections or a talk show? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA where I tend to go quite in depth, or perhaps you want to take part in one of those really long donated discussions where we talk about whatever you're into in esports. Well, if any of those perks or any of the others catch your fancy, join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box where? Down below.